Hey, Block 7 biology class. This is Mr. Mandrebo. I am here today to say hi. I hope everybody's doing well. Um, Looks like most of you have been handing in your materials so far for biology, which is great. Hopefully, you're handling other classes okay too. This week, so we have class today, Tuesday, and then also on Thursday. This week, you're going to be working on this food web lab for two classes. So I'm going to post this assignment today, but on Thursday, I'm really going to post the same thing. So you really have all week to be working on this. But I want to take a few minutes and explain what you have to do first so that you can understand it. So watch this entire video. It won't be too long. You could watch it a second time just to make sure you have it. But I quickly want to explain to you a little bit about what food webs are. All right, so you can see on this slide, this assignment's going to be worth 30 points. And ultimately, you're going to create something that looks like this, all right, by using organisms that we have living around here, all right? So in Denville, in Rockaway, in Morris County, or whatever town you might live in locally. That's the idea. So, as you guys already know, plants use energy from the sun to store food, right? They do that by doing photosynthesis. And then animals eat those plants to gain energy from them, right? And we would call those animals herbivores, right? Herbivores, also known as primary consumers, eat plants to gain energy. Now, those primary consumers, which are some kind of animal, could be eaten by other animals, and we call them secondary consumers, right? Or we might consider them a carnivore. Right? Now, if an organism eats both producers and primary consumers, then we would consider it an omnivore, right? So these were some of the vocab words from last week, hopefully, and I think a lot of you have learned them before. You picked up on them. But one of the things we want to do a lot of is show relationships between these organisms, right? And one of the ways to do that is what's called a food chain. If you look down here at the bottom, we see that seeds, which are obviously part of a plant, provide energy to a sparrow. So a sparrow serves as a primary consumer, eating a producer and gaining energy from the seeds. Then a hawk eats the sparrow and gets energy from it. This is a food chain showing energy being passed from seeds to sparrow to hawk. Right. Another way to illustrate this, I'm going to move my picture a little bit, is in what's called an energy pyramid, right? Showing that there's lots of energy down here in the producers, which come from plants. But if you ever thought about it, there's a whole lot more energy, a whole lot more plants than there are animals. In fact, just like in your backyard, if you look outside now, I'm sure you have some grass, maybe you have some shrubs, some trees. You can certainly see plenty of them out your window. And they store a whole lot of food, which is eaten by some insects, right? Now, or other primary consumers. But when organisms eat something, when energy is transferred to them, only a small amount of that energy gets passed, only about 10%. So, like if you eat, let's say, a serving of corn that has 100 calories of energy in it, that corn plant had to have 10 times as much energy in it. So 10 times 100 or 1,000 calories. And then, I don't know, let's say that corn was eaten by a cow, and then a person eats a hamburger from that cow. They're only getting 10% of that energy. So 10% of 10% is 1%. If we keep going on this pyramid, we eventually get up to smaller and smaller percentages. I know you all guys all remember that there's lots of kids in my house, and sometimes they're screaming. So if you hear that screaming in the background, it's kind of just standard for the Mandrebo household. But hopefully you can still focus on food chains and food webs. So I know a lot of people are kind of bored during this whole quarantine thing, but here it's a pretty exciting place, I got to tell you. All right, so what are you going to do? So you're going to study the feeding behavior of several local organisms and then build a food web that consists or could consist in an ecosystem around here, right? So the reason I'm giving you a couple classes to do this is it is going to require you to do some research on your own, right? It's not going to be difficult. Google will certainly help you, but you can't just make stuff up. You can't say that a deer eats a raccoon just because you want it to. They don't, right? So you have to actually research, and it has to make sense. And then you're going to build a food web, like what you see on the opening slide of this, and create a food pyramid from a food chain. Right? So what do you have to do? Right? Like I said, you got to do some research. You got to find images of each of the organisms. Right? So Google Images, you can certainly find them. Just make sure you have the right thing. And you're going to make arrows. It tells you to make green arrows for anything that goes from a producer to a primary consumer, blue for primary consumer to secondary, red for secondary to tertiary, and yellow to the fourth level consumers. Right? Sorry. And the organisms you need to use are down here, right? So a hawk, an owl, a cricket, snail, rabbit, grass, earthworm, fox, sparrow, caterpillar, robin, and snake, right? So all then a mouse, raccoon, deer, frog, and an oak tree. So these are all organisms that you might find in your backyard, in a park around here, things that you are somewhat familiar with, but you probably don't know what all of them eat, and so you've got to research that, right? And then you're going to make a Google slide, right, on the next page, right, to show this kind of food web, right? You can find lots of examples of food webs online, but also there's the one at the front of this one. But you can use the arrow tool on the toolbar, which you'll find in Google Slides, right? So if I sort of leave this for a second, right? If you go to this slide, if I want to make a food web, right, I can select different tools over here, right? I can make a line. Sorry. You've got all different tools that you can use, right? So you can decide what you want to use. And if you go to insert arrow, right, you can make an arrow. Right, I can then choose what way I want to, what color I want to make that, and you should choose the colors based on what it tells you on this slide. Right, if you need to add more slides to it, that's fine. You can certainly do that, but you also put your images here. They don't have to be big. I can always make them bigger on my screen to see it. And then finally, you have a few questions to answer, 5 questions here, right? I will be on Google Hangouts every day between 11 and 12 o'clock this week. So if you need to find me and you want to have a live chat, you can do that. You can also just email me if you have questions. So if you're working on it anytime, send me a question. I'll try to get back to it as soon as I can. But hopefully this video is helpful. Even though you have all week to do it, I encourage you to get started earlier since you do have to do a little bit of research. But hopefully this can be something you can have a little fun with, and you'll learn something about some of the animals that live around here. All right. So again, I hope you guys are doing well, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. All right. Bye.